In the world around you, in your community, there are many places. Places for fun and for work. Places for learning, for meeting people, and for buying things. We are going to take you to many of these places. Some you know well. Others you probably didn't even know existed. In this program, we are going to visit some very special places called neighborhoods. A neighborhood is a place where a group of people carry on an activity such as living, doing business, or manufacturing, which is making things. We all live in some kind of neighborhood. It is the main part of your community. It is where your family and the people near you live. But there are many kinds of neighborhoods. Suppose you lived on a ranch or farm. Over 100 years ago, most people in the United States lived on ranches and farms, but now relatively few families live in the country. If you are one of the people who do live on a ranch or farm, your home is your neighborhood. This is a farm family.
Your brother. Oh.
They live in this home alone. Their nearest neighbor is their grandparents, who live 5 miles away. They too are ranchers. The reason people live so far apart in the country is that most of the land is used to grow crops and raise animals. It takes a lot of land to make one farm or ranch work. Some of the good things about living this way are, it is quiet, there is plenty of fresh air, you never have to worry about being bothered by your neighbors, and you can have many pets to play with. One of the difficulties about living on a ranch or farm is that you always have to travel to visit family or friends, or go shopping, or to school. When a ranch family does go shopping, they go into town. There are thousands of small to medium-sized towns in North America. These towns or communities are divided into 3 parts. The first part is the downtown area. It is where everyone comes to buy things and conduct business. There are grocery stores, shops of all kinds, business offices, and banks. The second part of a town is the neighborhoods where the families live. In most towns, people live in homes. There usually aren't many condominiums or apartments in small towns. There may be a church or a park in the neighborhood. There are many good things about living in this kind of neighborhood. There are often large yards to play in. Most people know each other and are friendly.
Well, hi. How are you? Fine. And you today? I'm doing good. Have you been busy today?
Other family members like grandparents, aunts, and uncles often live in the same town. It is easy to get around town and find parking, and there is little crime. The third part of a small town is that it usually has at least one kind of industry. In this town, there is a stockyard where ranchers bring their cattle to be processed into meat, like steak or hamburgers. There's also a grain elevator, where the farmers sell their wheat or other grains they might grow.
Yes, I got 11-4.
Today, most people live in large cities. Millions of people can live in a big city which is made up of many different neighborhoods. Big cities always started as small towns. Today, this original part of the city is called Old Town. Here we find the oldest buildings. In these photos, we can see what the Old Town looked like 100 years ago. In Europe, the old towns are so old they existed hundreds of years before the United States was even a country. Often in the center of these old towns you can find a castle, or a church that is over 600 years old. In the United States, the old town is often close to the downtown of a big city. Downtown is where we find the tallest buildings. Think about how very different this is from the small town. A big city is divided into many residential neighborhoods. A residential neighborhood has many houses. They often look similar because they were built at the same time. These houses were all built of brick. These houses are newer and are built out of wood. Sometimes neighborhoods can be recognized by the fact that people of the same ethnic background live in them. These people are Hmong. They are from Asia. 100 years ago, some of the ethnic neighborhoods were built around people from Europe, such as the Irish, Italians, or Germans. Or they may have come from Africa. Some of the good things about living in ethnic neighborhoods are that most of the people speak the same original language, like Hmong, Spanish, or Chinese. And they share common traditions brought from other parts of the world, like the rock game these children are playing. Or the needlework this woman is doing. These African Americans share a tradition of gospel music. Instead of separate homes, many people who live in cities live in apartments or condominiums. The homes are all together in one large building. Each home in the building has its own entrance. Sometimes apartment buildings can be very tall, and sometimes the buildings are grouped together into a complex, which forms a residential neighborhood. Living in an apartment building or condo is very convenient. There are fewer chores to do, such as mowing the lawn or shoveling snow, and it's easy to find a friend to play with. Another kind of neighborhood in big cities is the industrial area, where much of the manufacturing takes place. Many people work in these industrial areas making things, such as these automobiles. On the edge of big cities is another kind of neighborhood called a suburb. Suburbs are a lot like small towns. They have residential areas made up of houses with yards. However, instead of going downtown, people do their shopping and business in malls. Malls are large buildings with many different kinds of stores all together. Many of the people who live and shop in the suburbs travel downtown into the central part of a big city to work. Some people think that in the future, more and more people will work at home using computers, telecommunications, and the internet. If this happens, we will probably see some new kinds of neighborhoods. So we have traveled to many different kinds of neighborhoods that offer many different kinds of lifestyles. From a city to a farm, from apartment buildings to houses. All of these neighborhoods have their own characteristics and advantages.